Hi there, my name is Judy Saul, otherwise known as Tie-Dye Judy for those of you who follow my blog. Today I'm going to demonstrate how I prepare a shirt to dye it with the bamboo pattern. You've seen pictures of it on my blog if you visited there, so let's get started and I'll show you what I do. First of all, I've got a dampened shirt that I pre-dyed, and what I'm going to do is a loose accordion fold, and I'm going to wrap it using sinew to bind it. So I just very gently push together the shirt into folds. It does not have to be an exact accordion fold such as you use on some patterns. And this is a very lightweight t-shirt which lends itself well to this type of a pattern because it shows the markings better than if you use a regular t-shirt. This is something I started experimenting with a while back and finally think I've got the way to do it to where it comes out looking the way I was hoping for. So I've got it just loosely pushed together here, and the shirt is dampened, and that helps to hold the accordion fold while I get ready to tie it. And the tying's kind of awkward at first. What I do is I take the sinew and I slide it underneath the shirt at the end, and I'm going to just tie it into a knot here just to get it started. And the whole thing that I've discovered about this particular pattern is that if I wrap and tighten it as I go along, then it resists the dye when I go ahead and apply the darker dye to create the pattern. But it is a little awkward to watch, so to get it started, what I usually do is just wrap it underneath a little bit with the spool in hand because that helps me to tighten it as I go along. And I'm not going to do this in a uniform pattern. It's going to be loose in some, or wide apart in some places, closer together in others. And it's one of those things I think you kind of have to play with it in order to see how it works. So part of the way down, and I just did another one of these earlier today so that I could show you a finished product. I did a little bit this way, and then I turn it around, and I do a little bit going in the other direction, just to see what actually will make it easier for me to get the sinew wrapped. And it's going to be irregular when I get done. Okay. So if I scrunch around here a little bit, I'm hoping it's not going to be too hard to watch, but I'm just mainly trying to get to the point where I can do a good wrap, get it tightened, and go down the shirt just to get the overall pattern. As you can see, it's starting to look a little bit irregular. And by all means, experiment with this if you decide to try it. One of the reasons I wanted to do a video is when I first started learning tie-dye, the only thing that was available was the written book with black and white photographs of all things. And just trying to go by words and still pictures was very awkward for a while. I had to really experiment on my own to see what worked. I think I'm going to switch now and hold it this way, because once you get part of this tied, it stays together, so then I can just work my hands down and wrap around as I go. And as you can see, I've got a little spillage coming here because it is a damp shirt. I pre-dyed this with a light color the other day. It's possible you could also do this on a commercially dyed shirt, but I would test it first, because not knowing what kind of dyes are used on commercially purchased shirts, you may not get the same quality of over dye. It may be that the commercial dyes exhaust all of the spots where the dye can actually bond with the fiber. So I just pre-dyed my own, and I just do it low water immersion style in a big bin. Poured a cup of dye over, let it sit for an hour, poured soda ash solution over, let it sit for a while longer. And it's not completely uniform, But with this particular pattern, I'm not worried about whether or not the dye underneath is a uniform depth of color. I just wanted something to start out. You can actually do this on a white shirt if you want to. The first couple that I did not under dye. I just used a dark dye on top. And I've gone through several iterations of how to apply the dye after I've tied it. I've tried soaking it low water immersion style. I've used the squeeze bottles for direct application. One of the problems was that I was getting too much dye saturating, and what I'm working for here is good markings that really do tend to look like a bamboo pattern. So that's where I'm going with this. And I'm going to go ahead and pause right now because I think you've seen how I'm wrapping this, and I'll finish this up. And then the next step is going to be to put it in the soda ash solution. I soak it for about 15 minutes, squeeze out the excess, and let it dry for a while. And then when we come back, I'll apply the dye over the tied portion. Hi there, we're back, and today I'm going to be dyeing the shirt that I tied yesterday. Here's how it ended up looking when I finished tying it. And I soaked it in a soda ash solution for about 15 minutes, squeezed out the excess moisture, and let it rest overnight just to evaporate a little bit of that excess moisture so that it's damp but not real wet when I apply the dye today. And I have my dye ready that I'm going to be using. It's an eggplant color, darker so that it will show the pattern better. And I'm going to be applying it with a foam brush to the exposed areas of the shirt. So let me readjust the camera so you can see what I'm doing, and then we'll get started. Okay, I'm going to just dip my foam brush in the dye just to get the tip moist. And then all I'm doing is just painting the dye over the shirt. The reason I'm doing this with a brush instead of saturating the shirt with direct application method or soaking it as in a low water immersion is because I just want a little bit of the dye to absorb into the fabric. That's what allows the design to show through. And after I get done with this, I'm going to show you a couple of examples of shirts that I did with different methods so you can see the difference in how the patterns show up. Okay, so this just takes a little bit. And I'm not soaking this in really heavily. I'm just trying to cover the exposed area, which is where we will see the design, but there will be areas that are undyed because I'm not putting enough dye on the garment to really saturate it. It bleeds a little bit, but not a lot. And the sinew does a real good job of resisting the dye so that we get the markings that I'm working on. So let me get this finished up, and I'll show you how the other ones look. And what I'm going to do when I get done with this is just wrap it in this plastic that I have in front of me to let it batch for, usually 6 to 8 hours, if not overnight, depending on my schedule and whether I have time to do it earlier or whether I want to just let it set until I've got time to rinse it out. And then usually with just one garment, I'll rinse it with a little bit of Synthropol in cold water to get rid of the soda ash solution. And then I will launder it in hot water with some Synthropol. And that stops the back bleeding so that the dye won't migrate afterwards. It's like a neutralizer. And then following that, I just rinse it real good to get the Synthropol out and then dry it and it's good to go. And another thing I wanted to mention, this particular design uses a lot of sinew or cord, and you can do it with either cotton twine, cord, sinew. You can reuse this cord. I've got large pieces that I've used for projects like this where I use them at least 2 or 3 times until they start to fray. So you can get a little more use out of them than just one tying. Okay, I've got this pretty well covered. Oops, one little spot here at the end I missed. Okay, so now I'm just going to slide my plastic over. And it's just a long piece of typical plastic wrap. And I've got enough on the ends to where I can fold those over. And then just fold this together like this, and it's ready to batch. Okay, here is a shirt that I dyed yesterday, the same way I just did this one. And I wanted to let you see how it actually looks. You can see the design. It's a little pale because I was using older dyes. But the point is that the markings have come out pretty significant. You can see them. It's not all bled out. And by comparison, this is a shirt. This is the first one I did trying the bamboo pattern. And it's just on a white shirt. But what I did was I poured dye over it and let it soak in the dye for a period of time. And I do have some of the markings, but it bled out quite a bit. And then I tried another example where I used a squeeze bottle to apply the dye. And in this particular case, I got fairly decent markings, but it wasn't as significant as what I wanted. And so that's why I tried the third way, which is to paint the dye on. So you can see you can use any of these three methods and get a result. It just depends on what you're working for. So I hope you give this a try and let me know how it works. Thanks for stopping.